Good day, viewers. You are welcome to the Rock Tutors online platform, and I'll be taking you government. We have about 200 clinically and carefully prepared questions that we are going to be solving in preparation for the forthcoming examinations. Work with me. Now to the first question. Which among the following issues is widely regarded as the biggest threat to democratic governance? So we are looking at what serves as a threat. So it has to be something negative. So anything positive will not be the answer. A says erosion of democratic norms and institutions. So when something is eroded, it has been removed. Are you getting now? So A is a likely answer, it's a negative thing. B says high rate of literacy. When people are well schooled, well educated, it cannot serve as a threat to democratic governance. B is out of it. Multi-party system, that is not a threat to democratic governance. The only threat to democratic governance is when a country is practicing one party system. UK and US, they both practice two party system. Nigeria practices multi-party system, so that is not a threat. Slow pace of development and isolationism. Now A and D are likely answers, but the question is asking for the one which among the following issues is widely regarded as the biggest threat. So D is a threat, but the biggest threat to democratic governance is erosion of democratic norms and institutions. Now, democratic norms like rule of law, like checks and balances, like constitutionalism, and so on and so forth. So the correct answer here is option A. Now to the next question. Why is the upper house in a federal state considered important to the political arrangements? Now, in a federal state has to do with federation or federalism, as expounded on by an Australian philosopher called Kenneth Clinton Weir. Now, which has to do with a system of government in which there is constitutional division of powers between the central government and the component parts. Is that clear? So under federalism, we have central government and component parts. Now, a key feature of federalism is the practice of bicameral legislature. Almost all federal countries will operate bicameral legislature, otherwise called dicameral legislature or duocameral legislature, which means that the law-making institution of government will consist of two houses or two chambers, the upper house and the lower house. Now, why should we have two houses, or why should we have an upper house when we already have a lower house? Now, A says it bars the impeachment of president. A president will be impeached when he commits impeachable offenses. B says checks the power of the lower house. Let us keep that somewhere, so it is not A. C says ensures inconsistency in power struggle. That is not tenable. D says has a potential for secessionist movement. That is not the reality. So having eliminated A, C, and D, the option left it checks the power of the lower house. When we have just one house in the legislature, they can do and undo. Are you getting now? Then they might not be able to consider bills thoroughly. Are you getting now? But when we have two chambers, upper house, lower house, if a bill has not been thoroughly considered by the lower house, by the time it gets to the upper house, it will be well considered. And for context, in Nigeria, the upper house is called the red chamber, otherwise called the Senate, while the lower house is called the green chamber, otherwise called the Federal House of Representatives. So the correct answer here is option B. Now to the next question. The following lists includes various electoral practices, but one of them is not, which is, now you have to be mindful of this, the structuring of the question. It means three things amongst four are common observable features of an electoral system, electoral practices. But one of it is an odd one. A says casting of ballot and vote counting. That is part of an electoral practice. Is that clear? B says campaigning by political parties and candidates. Political parties will sell their plans, those things that they intend to actualize when they win election. In government, we call that manifesto. Manifesto refers to the cardinal plans and programs which a political party intends to actualize once it gets to power. How will they sell that manifesto to the people? Through campaign. So B is part of electoral practice. D says voter registration. Those who vote are called voters or electorate or electors. They will be registered by the electoral body. That's one of the functions of INEC. So having eliminated E, B, and D, we are left with C. Now you might be wondering, what is censorship? To censor something means to limit what such a person can say or can do. So when you censor mass coverage of elections, it means you are limiting or hindering the press, the mass media, otherwise called the fourth estate of the realm, from giving citizens up-to-date coverage of election. So the correct answer here is option C. Now to the next question. The process by which a citizen can be initiated into the political system of a country is by dash. Now, who is a citizen? A citizen is a legal member of a state who has rights to enjoy and obligations to perform. The opposite of a citizen is called an alien or a foreigner or a non-citizen. So, how can we initiate a citizen to the political system? The political system refers to the entirety of the structure whereby citizens vote, whereby leaders get to power, and how states are governed. How do we get citizens to participate in voting, in choosing leaders, or even in choosing to contest for election? Are you getting now? So, we want to look at all those processes. A says being apathetic to a national cause. Apathetic is from the word apathy, and in government, political apathy refers to lack of interest in politics. You might also say disinterestedness in politics. So you can't get people to participate in politics by they being disinterested. So A is not a logical option. B says taking residence of a country. That a person lives in a country does not naturally translate to they being initiated. We have foreigners living in Nigeria. Do they vote? No. Do they have the right to vote? They do not. And in government, the right to vote is called franchise, otherwise called suffrage. So C says unalloyed loyalty to a leader. Citizens have many functions, many rules, many duties and obligations. And one of the duties is, loyalty, otherwise called patriotism or allegiance. But it is loyalty to the state and not loyalty to the leader. Is that clear? So having eliminated A, B, and C, the last one is voting to elect representatives. A way by which citizens can participate in politics is to vote to elect those that will represent them. So the correct answer here is option D. Now to the next question. The manner in which prayer groups and political parties operate on the same platform in a democracy is determined by various factors, such as prayer groups are also called interest groups. They are also called occupational groups, also called socio-industrial groups, also called associational groups. A prayer group refers to a group of persons who come together to aggregate, their interests, and they have an objective. And what is the objective of a prayer group? Is it to win election? No. What is the objective? It is to influence government policies for the benefit of their members. An example of a prayer group is, Nigerian Bar Association. That's the Association of Lawyers, Nigerian Medical Association, Association of Doctors. Are they seeking to win election? No. They are seeking to speak with the government to be able to attract policies that will favor their members. That's a prayer group. Now, what's a political party? A political party refers to a group of people who come together to aggregate their interests, and they have the motive to do what? To win election, to capture power, or to form government. Now, we want to look at what platform and at what level will a political party be similar to a prayer group. A says agenda setting mechanism. Political parties set agenda, prayer groups set agenda. So that is a likely answer. B says provision of the needs of the people. Political parties don't have the responsibility to provide needs of the people. It is the government in power that has that responsibility. C says same goals and objectives. Do they both have goals? Yes. But do they both have same goals? No. What is the goal of a prayer group? To influence government policies. What is the goal of a political party? To win electorates. Can be C. D says structure of operation and membership. They have structure, they have mode of operation, but they don't have the same membership. Is that clear? Who are those that can be found in a prayer group? People that possibly belong to the same profession. But in a prayer group, you can have people from different socio-economic strata, Is that clear? So the correct answer is option A. Now to the next question. Accountability in constitutional democracy is best enforced through a system of dash. Now, what do you mean by accountability? That mechanism that makes an institution not to lord it over other institutions, or the mechanism under democracy that restricts the tendency of a political actor to become dictatorial, to become tyrannical. So when you have accountability, those that have been elected into power, they become responsible, they become accountable, knowing fully that they don't have unlimited powers. Their powers have been limited. Is that clear? So accountability in constitutional democracy is best enforced through what? Through checks and balances. So the correct answer is option A. Now to the next question. The membership of the Public Service Commission is established by dash. Now, Public Service Commission was the former name of Civil Service Commission. So nowadays we call it Civil Service Commission. That is the institution, the government body that is responsible for recruiting civil servants, training them, promoting them, transferring them from one office to another, handling their retirement matters, and other condition of service. Is that clear? So the question is structured as Public Service Commission, but it also means Civil Service Commission. Under the law, we have Civil Service Commission, and the law has stated how those who will head Civil Service Commission will come into place. So what looks like the law here, that's the Constitution. Is that clear? At the federal level, the Public Service Commission is constituted by the executive president, while at the state level, it is constituted by the executive governor. So the correct answer is option B. Now to the next question. The principle that requires the civil servants to maintain political non-alignment in carrying out their duties is referred to dash. That is political neutrality. That is the concept that ensures that a civil servant stays out of partisan politics. Is that clear? So a civil servant must abstain out of partisan politics. Anything that involves, supporting a political party, are you getting now? Rating a political party over another and being biased or partial when it comes to politics, civil servants are expected to restrain and refrain from such things. So that concept is, political neutrality, otherwise called bureaucratic neutrality. Can civil servants vote? Yes, that is the right guaranteed to all citizens to vote and be voted for. But can a civil servant contest for a political office? The principle of neutrality does not permit him. Is that clear? If a civil servant must contest for an office, he must first resign his appointment before going for election. Now to the next question. The ethical principle of the media that prioritizes the dissemination of current, updated information is referred to as dash. That's the ethics, the doctrine of timeliness. So much that it must be on the spot, it must be live. That is why, press outfits and media houses, there is always something we have called breaking news. So as it is occurring, they are disseminating it. So that is the ethics of timeliness. Information is as powerful as when it just occurred. Is that clear? So the correct answer is option B. Now to the next question. The act of a media outlet publishing fabricated information about a political candidate in order to undermine their reputation is termed dash. Now, take note of this. It says a media outlet publishing fabricated information in government, that is called defamation. When you spoil someone's reputation or character, is that clear? That is defamation. We don't target character assassination. In government, it is defamation. You are spoiling, you are defaming the person's image or repute. Is that clear? Now, when defamation is carried out through verbal or oral means, you can be sued for slander. But when defamation is carried out through written form, you can be sued for libel. Is that clear? And when the case is taken to court, the person who has taken the offender to court can apply for damages. So in case the question comes out that the cost awarded against defamation is dash, the answer is what? Damages. In this instance, the correct answer is B, defamation. Now to the next question. Which of the following best describes how local government authorities can leverage delegated legislation to better address the needs and challenges of their local communities? First of all, what is delegated legislation? But before we look at delegated legislation, you have to know legislation, otherwise called enactment, refers to the process of making laws, or you could also say laws made by the legislature. Meanwhile, when laws are made by other institutions rather than the legislature, those laws are called delegated legislation. I'll take it again. When the legislature makes a law, it is a legislation. But when other bodies, rather than the legislature makes a law, it is called what? Delegated legislation. So a law made by a local government is called bylaw. That's a delegated legislation. How can they adapt their delegated legislation, to the challenges of their local communities? A says boycott and withdrawal of services for lack of development. Why should they do that? A local government has been created to bring government nearer to the people. So to boycott, it stands against reason. It cannot be A. B says intense lobbying for community development and employment. They have that responsibility, the power, the latitude, to develop their community and create jobs. It can be B. C says adapting national policies and regulations to suit the specific requirements of their constituents. And D says stamped top-bottom approach to local development. The correct answer is option C. So when a policy has been made at the federal level and at the state level, when the local government discovers that, this law can also be relevant at our own end, they use their power to make laws, and such laws are bylaws, to adapt such national laws to their local peculiarities, their local needs. So the correct answer here is option C. Now to the next question. What factors should citizens analyze most when evaluating a political party's manifesto? We said it the other time that a manifesto refers to the cardinal plans and programs which a political party intends to actualize or achieve when they win election. Is that clear? That is what they use to campaign. Is that clear? So, what should citizens analyze most appertaining to a manifesto? A, manner in which it was articulated, that's not really necessary. B, popularity of the manifesto. Some manifestos might not be popular, but might really be needed. Are you getting it? So, it is not really about popularity. C says policy proposal. Let's keep that somewhere. D says single issue purpose. The correct answer here is C, the policy proposal. The proposal that is being recommended by that manifesto. Is it subsidy? Is it deregulation? And so on and so forth. So the correct answer here is option C. Now to the next question. Public opinion polling data can help governments in one of the following ways. Collision, that is negative. C says propaganda. Propaganda is negative. That's the deliberate manipulation of information. The correct answer is option D, policy evaluation. So now to the next question. The political party system is beneficial to the democratic system in that it assists to dash. A political party is a group of people who come together to aggregate interests and have the motive to win election. While a party system refers to the arrangement of political parties. Is it about one party? That's one party system. Is it about two parties? That's two party system. Is it about more than two? That's multi-party system. So the political party system, how does it benefit the democratic system when we have political parties? Of what relevance? Of what benefits do they serve? A says they aggregate and articulate diverse interests. That's the correct answer. Because political parties serve to aggregate the interests of different persons. Are you getting now? And they form it into a manifesto that they intend to actualize when they get to office. So the correct answer here is A. But let's consider other options. It says derailing government programs. That's negative. That cannot be the motive of setting up political parties. C says ensuring government plays to their dictates. They carry that out, but that is not the major, benefit of having a political party. D says manipulating. That's entirely negative. So the correct answer is option A. Now to the next question. What is the bedrock of a country's foreign policy determination in international relations? What is foreign policy? It refers to the set of techniques, strategies, processes by which a country relates with another country. Are you getting now? So an individual can have a personal policy. A country can also have their own foreign policy. But what is that foundation, that basis, that bedrock that constitutes a country's foreign policy? That is called domestic interest or national interest. So let's check where we have it. A says lobbying for development. No. B, the correct answer is option B, national interest. Now let's go to the next question. In what way does traditional authorities contribute to governance? According to a German sociologist called Max Weber, he expanded and excogitated on three types of authority. The first one is traditional authority, otherwise called native authority, which consists of the influence and authority possessed and exercised by traditional rulers. So, how does it contribute to governance? A says circumvent the constitution. Circumvent is a negative word, so it can be a benefit. B says manipulation. It cannot be B. That's negative. C says representation and inclusion. That's a positive connotation. So it could be C. Let's look at D. Source of all authority in the land. It can be D. Why? The constitution of a country is the source of all authority in that country. So it cannot be D. There are two reasonable things here, C and D. We have ruled D out. We are left with C, representation and inclusion. So traditional authority system, it permits people who are traditional rulers, the obas in the west, the obis in the east, the emirs and sultans in the north. Are you getting now? They are assimilated into the political system, particularly at the local government level, to provide advice. Are you getting now? For local government heads at the local level. Now to the next question. The following activities and experiences of nationalist leaders during the struggles for independence can provide several important political lessons, except, so we want to look at, things that can be like, that resulted from struggles of nationalist leaders. So three will be one of the results of the struggles, one will be the odd one out. So we are going to pick the odd one out. Nationalist leaders are those that, agitated for independence for Nigeria. A, importance of inclusive representation. Are you getting that? All the way from, Akinsoya to H.O. Davis to Macaulay to Awolowo and so on and so forth, they agitated for inclusive representation. It can be A. B says leveraging popular mobilization. They leverage on it, to establish different political parties like the Action Group, like the NPC, like the NEPU, and so on and so forth. It can be B. C says non-violent civil resistance. They adopted non-violent civil resistance. I get it now. We had the Aba Women riot, where they rioted and protested against, the desire to tax women in the East. So having eliminated three options, we are left with D. And it says passive attitude to political participation. Nationalists were not passive, they were active as it pertains to political participation. So the correct answer here is option D. Now to the next question. The constitutional development in British West African colonies before independence was characterized by the following key factors, except, so we want to look at constitutional developments in British West Africa, the characteristics, things that we could associate with it. So three will be associated with it, one will be the odd one out, the odd one will be the answer. A, accelerated pace for independence. Let's leave that somewhere. B says balancing colonial interests and local needs. B was a reality of constitutional development in British West Africa. C says experimentation with federal unitary models. At several times, federal system according to Authorship Constitution of 1946, which regionalized Nigeria, and according to the Oliver Lytton Constitution of 1954, federalism was introduced. So C is part of it. This is increasing representation and devolution. From time to time, all the way from Clifford to Richard to Macpherson to Oliver Lytton. The number allocated to Nigeria kept increasing per time. So D is part of it. Having eliminated B, C, and D, we are left with A. The constitutional development, it accelerated pace for independence, but that was not the motive. It occurred as a result of all the other three options. But A occurred, but not as if it was intended to occur, but as a result of the three other options. Now to the next question. Which of the following reasons was a key factor in the formation of political parties by some nationalists in the British West African colonies? Which of the following reasons was a key factor in the formation of political parties by some nationalists? A says increasing communal, religious, and sectarian differences. Now, to be sincere, political parties were formed along ethnic and tribal lines, but they didn't actually set out to be like that. So it was not the motive, but it occurred as a result. Is that clear? B says the growth of nationalist sentiment and desire for self-government. B is a likely answer. C says rapid industrialization and economic revolution. No. Strict enforcement of colonial policies and conscription. The correct answer is option B, the growth of nationalist sentiment. Now, the sentiments and awareness that occurred as a result of the education enjoyed by Nigerians like H.O. Davis, Abat Macaulay, Ikoko, Ikoli, and so on and so forth. People who schooled, people like Akintola, Otto Press, who schooled in UK, and upon coming back to Nigeria, they had this sentiment and desire that we shouldn't be under the suzerainty and imperial rule of Britain again. And they were looking for ways by which they can organize themselves, how that they formed different political parties, how that they contested for offices, and at the end of the day, they were able to achieve independence for Nigeria on the platter of gold. So the correct answer is option B. Now to the next question. The most significant modern threats to a state's ability to independently determine its foreign policy in recent time is dash. Now, a state in government is also called a country. Now, ability to independently determine your affairs, that is sovereignty. So we are looking at limitation to sovereignty. Limitation to what? Sovereignty. But the question is specific, that a modern threat, a modern limitation, a limitation that was not occurring before but is now emerging. So A says cyber attack, which looks like a limitation, but it is not the most dominant modern one. B says leadership. Leadership is not a limitation. C says globalization, it is a limitation. D says population explosion, that is not a limitation. So we have two likely answers, A and C. Cyber attack is a limitation, but globalization is more of a threat, a limitation. How that countries could, manage their own affairs without having anything to do with external countries before. Are you getting now? But due to globalization, reliance on trade, are you getting now? And the need for political security and economic protection by larger countries, that has come as a limitation to the independence and sovereignty of countries. Now to the next question. The origin of the unitary and federal systems of government adopted by some British colonies in West Africa is traced to dash. Unitary system of government has to do with, the centralization of power in the hands of a single central government, while federal system has to do with division of powers between the central government and the component parts. So what necessitated some British colonies, to adopt unitary as well as federal systems? A says alignment with international recommendation. That is not correct. B says colonial administrative structures. That is correct. C says peer group theory. That does not exist. D says ideological training. That is irrelevant. Now let me explain B. Colonial administrative structures. Nigeria was colonized by Britain, and one of the systems used by Britain was federalism, as if you can understand it under regionalism under Richard's Constitution of 1946, and the introduction of federalism under Littleton's Constitution of 1954. So because of the fact that some colonial masters used these systems of government before independence, at independence we also did what? We received these systems and we started practicing them. So the correct answer is option B. Now to the next question. In what one way has the economic community of West African states contributed to the economies of countries in the bloc? ECOWAS was established May 28, 1975 to cater for the economic as well as political development of West African states. And one of the achievements of ECOWAS is what we want to consider here. A says free movement of goods and services across the bloc. That is an achievement. B says foreign goods and services from non-member countries supported heavily. That is not one of the motive of ECOWAS. C says harmonization of customs. ECOWAS has not been able to harmonize a common custom, common port, and common transportation. D says the use of a common currency. ECOWAS has not been able to achieve a common currency. Having eliminated B, C, and D, there is the reality of free movement of goods and services. How that a citizen does not require visa to travel to Gambia, to travel to Ghana. There is free movement of goods and services across the bloc. The correct answer is option A. Now to the next question. The following includes the benefits West African states derive by their association with the United Nations, except dash UN was established in 1945. That's the association of independent countries. A says disaster relief and humanitarian aid. That is one of the benefits derived. B says economic and social development. It's one of the benefits derived. We have different agencies like Food and Agricultural Organization, World Health Organization, and so on and so forth. C says peacekeeping and conflict resolution. That is one of the benefits derived by being a member of UN. D says subversive missions against rival states. That is not a benefit of being a member of UN. Is that clear? Have we eliminated A, B, C? The correct answer is option D. Now to the next question. The African Union has been severally criticized as a sleeping giant, but one achievement stands tall in their name, which is providing a common platform for dash. Now, African Union refers to the Association of Independent Countries in Africa. It was formerly called Organization of African Unity. Now, what has it been able to achieve? A, achieving good governance and eradication of poverty of all member states. They have not been able to eradicate poverty of all member states. B says global recognition of member states and common identity. That is a likely answer in that AU speaks with a single voice when it comes to global issues, and they've been able to ensure decolonization, to ensure that all African states obtain what? Independence. That's global recognition. States are recognized, and common identity, that is speaking with a common voice. C says equitable distribution of wealth. That's not a reality. D says rivalry and equal status in global economy. We have equal status under AU, but there is no rivalry. Having eliminated A, C, and D, the correct answer is option B, global recognition of member states and common identity. Now to the next question. The greatest threats to the judicial arm of government is often considered to be political interference and dash. The judiciary is also called the courts or the judicature. What is the greatest problem, the hindrance, the threats to their proper functioning? It is considered to be political interference and dash. A says erosion of judicial autonomy. To erode means to take away, to deplete. Now, the judiciary is supposed to be autonomous, that is, to be reasonably independent, to be able to dispense justice without fear, without retribution, without favor. So, A is correct, but let's look at other options. Increased caseloads and backlogs. That is not a problem. Are you getting now? When there are increased backlogs and cases, more judges are recruited. C says limited public awareness of their operations. That is not a threat. D says technological limitations and mobility. That is a challenge, but it is not a great challenge. The question is asking us for the greatest threats. So the correct answer here is erosion of judicial autonomy, option A. Now to the next question. Ultimately, the executive arm of government's core function is to govern the country in an effective and responsible manner on behalf of the dash. Now, the agents of the states, which helps the states to be able to manage the affairs of the people, is the executive or is the government, and the institution which actually enforces law is the executive on behalf of who? Of the people. So the correct answer here is option D, people. Mind you, if you don't see people, you can also pick masses, you can also pick citizens, you can also pick demography, you can also pick populace. Is that correct? Now to the next question. The importance of the rule of law in a functional democracy includes all the following except, rule of law simply has to do with the dominance of the law over everyone in the society, both the rulers and the ruled, the rich and the poor, the educated and the unlettered. Rule of law was brought to the fore by an English philosopher named Professor Albert Van Dicey when he wrote a book in 1885 titled An Introduction to the Study of the Law of the Constitution. Now, the importance of the rule of law can be seen in the following, except A says ensuring equality under the law. There are three cardinal principles of the rule of law. We have equality under the law, we have supremacy of the law, we have fundamental human rights. So A is already part of rule of law. B says imposing checks and balances. That is part of rule of law. And what is the benefit of checks and balances? To ensure that no institution of government is able to wax dictatorial, despotic, and tyrannical to the extent of lording it over other institutions. That is checks and what? Balances. C says strengthening democracy institutions or democratic institutions of the state. That is part of rule of law. Why D says making the judiciary untouchable. That is not part of the importance of the rule of law. The judiciary should also be accountable. They shouldn't be untouchable. I believe that if a judge errs and shirks in his responsibility, there is a body called the National Judicial Council which is able to sanction such judges. So the correct answer here is option D. Now to the next question. The main advantage of the crown colony system to the British West African colonies was the dash. Now, Britain used indirect rule, while France used direct rule. Britain used what you could call association policy, while France began with assimilation policy. And when they discovered that assimilation was not succeeding, they copied Britain and they adopted association, otherwise called indirect rule. Now, that system of governing territories, what was the advantage? A says centralized administrative control. Britain did not use centralized administrative control. B says development and self-governance of the people. Now, Britain committed to development of her colonies, establishment of electoral bodies, establishment of Yabatek, conduct of election, the granting of elective principles under the 1922 Clifford Constitution. But that was not the main advantage. We are being asked for the main one. C says equal representation and balance of power. There was no equal representation. Women could not vote. Are you getting now? D says flexibility of changing local conditions and demands. That's the correct answer. Albeit that when Britain got to the north, they saw an established system. They used it in conjunction with the emirs. When they saw the western part, they adopted it in conjunction with the others. And then they tweaked it to suit the reality in the Igbo area. Are you getting now? How that there were no kings, but they had to establish representatives or agents called warrant chiefs. So they adjusted their colonial system to be able to suit different conditions and demands. Now to the next question. The spirit of nationalism that swept through the British West African colonies produced one of the following key political effects. A says civil disobedience and anti-colonial agitation. Now, nationalism has to do with a self-awareness that we shouldn't be under imperial or colonial rule and would love to govern ourselves. So it led to civil disobedience and anti-colonial agitation, whereby nationalist leaders were agitating for self-rule, for independence and self-government. So A is a likely answer. B says elimination of ethnic and regional divisions. That was not true. C says dismantling of all colonial political vestiges. That was not true. D says rapid economic independence and self-reliance. Now, the correct answer here is option A. A and D looks like likely answers, but the one that is more correct is option A: civil disobedience and anti-colonial agitation. Now to the next question. Which of the following considerations is the best way for a state to leverage its foreign policy determination? A says cross-border restrictions and militarization. When you restrict your borders, You won't be able to relate well in the Committee of Nations. It can be A. B says direct foreign policy to attract investment, trade, and international cooperation. That is a likely answer. C says emphasize ideological principles over economic interest. That is risky. Economic interest should come to the fore over ideological what principles, or should be at the same level in the minimum. So D says pursue an isolationist policy. An isolationist policy is not possible in this globalized world. A country will need another country for trade, for market, and for commerce. So having eliminated A, C, and D, we are left with option D, direct foreign policy to attract investment and trade. That is the correct answer, option B. Now to the next question. The primary role that prayer groups have to play in sustaining democratic governance is by dash. Like we said earlier, that prayer groups, they exist, to influence government policies for the benefit of their members. Now, what is that primary role that they do? They aggregate interest, they harmonize interest, they articulate interest. To do what? Is it to win election? No. To influence government policies for the benefit of their members. So that is option A. A says applying aggressive and destructive tactics. It is not option A. B says avoiding accountability. That is not the answer. C says polarizing the society. To polarize means to divide the society. Prayer groups don't exist to divide. What do they exist to do? To set agenda for the government, to influence government policies, to act as a check on the government, or what you could call a watchdog. So this says serving as a check on elected officials, policies, and programs. So the correct answer here is option D. Now to the next question. Which of the following conditions is considered the most effective way of measuring public opinion? Like we said earlier, the public opinion refers to the aggregate views of majority of the people over a particular public issue at a particular time. Now, what is the most effective way to gauge, to ascertain, to determine the opinion of the public? Is it by conducting focus group interview? You can know the opinion of people when you interview them, but that is not the most effective, because you don't only be knowing the opinions of only those that you're able to meet and interview. B says establishing direct citizen feedback channels. That is a likely answer. C says monitoring social media trend. How many accounts do you want to monitor on social media? So C is not an effective means. D says relying only on media editorial. If you rely only on media editorial, you are ruling out other avenues. So having eliminated A, C, and D, the correct answer is B, establishing direct citizen feedback channels. Now to the next question. How impactful and resourceful is the mass media to democratic governance? The mass media is also called the press, and they are, popularly referred to as the fourth organ of government, or the fourth estate of the realm. Now, which role do they play? They educate the people, they inform the people, they sensitize the people, they entertain the people. So we want to look at how impactful and resourceful are they. A says they form alliance with government for media protection and unrestrained operations. They shouldn't have unrestrained operations. If anybody possesses unrestrained ability to operate, it means nobody can limit what they can do. And they can go gaga, they can go berserk, they can go haywire. So it can be A. B says inform, facilitate discourse, and measure government stewardship. That is a likely answer. C says mirror sectional interest. Mass media does not exist to mirror sectional interest. They are expected to mirror national interest, not interest of a particular section in the country. This is regime protection. Mass media does not exist to protect a regime. In fact, they exist to offer constructive criticism to the government. Is that clear? Now, having eliminated option A, option C, and option D, mass media, they are impactful and resourceful when they inform, when they facilitate discourse, and when they measure government stewardship. Option B. Now to the next question. The core mandate of public corporations that defines their operations is that. Now, as Jamb students, as students preparing for WAEC, you have to know that public corporations are also called government businesses or state ventures or public enterprises or parastatals. Now, what is the major reason for setting them up? They are established majorly to provide social amenities for the people. Now, let's look at the one that looks like social amenities. That is option D, provision of essential goods and services at a reasonable rate. So the correct answer is option D. Now to the next question. A major feature of the pre-independence constitutional development in British West African countries was the dash. That is, before independence, the realities of constitutions used to govern, the colonies before independence. A says absolute attitude of non-cooperation and violent attacks on the colonial government. Keep that somewhere. B says refusal to accede to reforms by the British colonial administration. Keep that somewhere. Now that's a feature, but we are looking for a major feature. C says gradual and incremental reforms and granting of self-governance. That is a likely answer. D says total shutdown of nationalist demand. No, Britain did not shut down their entire demands. Britain gave them some of their demands and they did not accede to some of the demands. So the major feature amongst the ones that we have here is gradual. Britain did not grant them independence at once. It was gradual. Are you getting now? They created the Nigerian Council in 1914 under Lugard. They created the Legislative Council in 1922. Are you getting now? Under H. Clifford. And the number of representatives were being increased from time to time, up till when they created the Federal House of Representatives, up till when federalism was introduced under Oliver Lytton Constitution in 1954, which would ultimately culminate into the granting of independence in 1960, October 1. Now to the next question. The key feature that characterized the post-independence. So what we are looking at is the reality of constitution after independence. In British West African colonies. A says devolution of extreme power to subnational government. No, that is confederalism. No country practices it under British West Africa. So B says entrenched clause of supreme authority. That is, let's keep that somewhere. B says ethnic and regional power sharing mechanism. That is a likely answer. D says parliamentary system of government. The answer here, which is the most correct answer, is C, ethnic and regional power sharing mechanisms. How that federalism was encouraged. Are you getting that? Particularly in Nigeria, how that we have the regions, 3 regions before independence, and after independence, under the 1963 Republican Constitution, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa used the power to create additional regions to carve out the Midwestern region from the old Western region. So the correct answer here is ethnic and regional power sharing mechanisms, option C. Now to the next question. It is the active involvement of the citizens that ensures the proper functioning and continued progress of Dash. So when citizens involve themselves actively, what does it ensure? It ensures the proper functioning and progress of Dash. A democratic society, moral society. Passive citizens means they are not involved. So it can be the answer. Sectional interest, it means giving to only the interest of a particular section in the country. That is not a likely answer. So we are left with A and B, democratic society as well as moral society. The more correct answer here is democratic society. When citizens participate actively, they join a political party, they come out to vote, they can be able to choose the type of leaders that they want. And by doing that, they are ensuring the proper functioning of democracy. Is that clear? The correct answer is option A. Now to the next question. What is a key reason for which some political societies choose to adopt a confederate system of government? Confederate system of government is otherwise called confederacy or confederation. And while the federal system has to do with division of powers between central governments and component parts, but the federal government is a little bit stronger than the component part. Under confederate system, we have division of powers between the central government and component parts, but the component parts are stronger than the central government. So we want to look at why political societies, why will they opt for confederate system of government? A says centralized power. Power is not centralized under confederate system. The greatest power resides with the component part. B says establish a unitary system. That is not the reality under Confederates, because under unitary system, powers are convoluted, amalgamated, constellated in the hands of the central government. C says, prevent the concentration of power and all from greater local control. The correct answer is option C, because powers are not concentrated in the hands of the central government, but the component parts, the local parts, they are able to exert greater control than the central part. That is a reality under Confederate system. Now to the next question. In what way does a written constitution contribute to a fledgling democracy? A fledgling democracy is a democracy that is evolving, that is rising. So when a country is practicing democracy and they are evolving day by day, year by year, decade by decade, and they are adopting a written constitution. And what's a written constitution? It is a constitution that is codified, that is encapsulated, that is contained in a single book or documents. Are you getting now? Jamb can twist it. They can say a constitution that is written down. That's not the answer. Are you getting? It is written in a single book. The opposite is unwritten. Unwritten is not that it is not written down, but it is written in multiple books, or some are written, some are unwritten. Is that clear? So when a country practices written constitution, what does it ensure for a country practicing democracy? A says it ensures freedom of society in all things. No, there can be freedom in all things. There will be rights as well as limitations to those rights. B says it manipulates. Anything manipulates is negative. That cannot be the purpose of a constitution. C says it provides for state relations and global cooperation only. A written constitution directs and dictates how Nigeria will relate with other countries, but that is not the only thing. So the only here negates C. This says it provides a legal framework for governance. Constitution provides that structural framework that dictates how the country is going to be governed. So the correct answer here is option D. Now to the next question. Which of the following statements best fits the description and characteristic of a cabinet system of government? What's a cabinet system? It is also called a parliamentary system, or a Westminster system, or bicephalous executive, or dicephalous executive, or docephalous executive, in which the head of state is different from the head of government. So how many heads do we have under parliamentary system? 2 heads, the head of state as well as the head of what? Government. An example of a country practicing parliamentary system is Great Britain or United Kingdom. Are you getting? Where we have 2 heads. We have the head of state, the king of UK. Are you getting? And we also have the head of government, that is the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And you have to know that under cabinet system, the members of the executive, they are nominated by the legislature and they are responsible to the legislature. Now let's check for the options. A says executive branch of government is collectively responsible. That's the correct answer. So the executive branch is collectively, but let's look at the other options. Executive has a fixed term of office. The executive does not have a fixed term. If they keep winning, they keep having majority, they can keep coming to the executive. Then C, direct control and less fusion. There is great fusion under parliamentary system, albeit that the executive and the legislature are fused together. D says unrestrained powers of the executive. The executive does not have unrestrained powers. Their powers are limited. They are restrained. In fact, when they are no longer performing, leading the country aright, they can be removed by the legislature through a process called vote of no confidence, which must be followed by the resignation of the executive. So the correct answer here is option A, collective responsibility of the executive to the legislature. Now to the next question. Now to the 41st question. The electoral process and elections in West African states are most often characterized by extreme violence due to a variety of factors, one of which is that. So we are looking at those things that can cause violence to occur during election. Are you getting now? A says active political citizens and education. When citizens are educated politically and they are also active when it comes to politics, that cannot lead to electoral violence. So A is out of it. B says corruption and mistrust. That's a negative thing. So it has the B is a likely answer. C says low levels of poverty and employment. So when the level of poverty is low, are you getting that? It means education is high. When low levels of poverty, are you getting that? That cannot lead to electoral violence. Then this is patriotism and nationalist sentiment. Patriotism cannot lead to electoral violence. What has the tendency to characterize electoral process is corruption and mistrust of the referee in the process. So the correct answer is option B. Now to the next question. What was the primary objective for the introduction of the French colonial administrative policy of Louis Kedar in our West African colonies? You know, when France came to Africa, France colonized Upper Volta, Senegal, Guinea, and so on and so forth. And France used a colonial policy called assimilation policy, which is derived from the French word which means assimilere, that is to Frenchify the citizens. But when France discovered that the assimilation policy was not going to be successful, and due to the coming to power of General Charles de Gaulle as the ruler of France, he introduced a policy to change assimilation to association through an instrument called Louis Kedar in 1956. Now let's answer the question. What was the primary objective for the introduction of the Louis Kedar? A. Decentralize political power and promote gradual self-governance. Now, France was governing directly. They were not making use of traditional rulers. So there was a centralized form of governing under assimilation. But through the introduction of Louis Kedar, which led to association policy, decentralization came in. So A is a likely answer. B, completely withdraw French influence in West Africa. They did not reduce their influence, they didn't withdraw it. C, grant unconditional independence. Louis Kedar did not grant unconditional independence. It only decentralized and assimilate and kind of carried traditional rulers along in colonial government. D, safeguard businesses and each population. Like I said, Louis Kedar has to do with changing assimilation to association, changing from centralization to decentralization. And what's the applicable answer there? That's option A. Now to the next question. What term is given to the structure and dynamics of the political parties and their interactions in the political system? That is party system, and it is contained, encapsulated, and enshrined in the constitution. So what's party system here? That's option C. It refers to the number, arrangement, and structure of political parties in a polity or in a state. So the correct answer is option C. Now to the next question. The Public Service Commission plays a critical role in building within the political space a capable, ethical, and dash. Like I said the other time, that Public Service Commission is another name for Civil Service Commission. And what is the duty of Civil Service Commission? To employ civil servants, to train civil servants, to promote civil servants, and to attend to the conditions of service of civil servants. So anything that will be the answer here, we have to do with civil service. A says elite political class, that's out of it. So the correct answer is impartial civil service, option B. Now to the next question. How did the French protectorate policy affect the political development of our West African colonies? Now, like we said earlier, France used direct rule. They governed the people directly. They did not carry along the traditional institutions and rulers to administer. Now, we are being asked that how did this policy affect the political party development? You would observe that because the traditional rulers and educated elites were well carried along in British, colonies and protectorates, it was easier for the colonies and protectorates under Britain to quickly gain independence and mature politically, faster than the French colonies. So A says it defaced completely the traditional political authority. That's correct, because they did not carry along the traditional institutions. So it defaced it. B says it decentralized power. They didn't decentralize, they centralized. It was when they introduced Louis Kedar that changed assimilation to association that they decentralized. So B is not an answer. C says it preserved traditional. It did not reckon with traditional political institutions. This says totally outlawed all freedoms of the local people. Now, you know, in the four communes in Senegal, in Saint Louis, in Gori, in Dakar, and in Rufisque, rights were given so much that residents and natives of these four communes were given the citizenship of France. So it gave some rights, even though there were also oppressive policies like forced labor and indigenous policy. So the correct answer here is option A. Now to the next question. The rise of military regimes in the political landscape of West Africa can be attributed to that. Now, why is it that we have more soldiers having the desire to hijack political power? Mind you, the process through which soldiers hijack political power is called coup d'etat. When soldiers hijack power from fellow soldiers, we call it counter coup. But when soldiers hijack power from civilians, we call it coup d'etat. So what has given the rise to frequent military regimes in Africa? A says corruption, abuse of the constitution, and weak state institutions. I need to say this, that the major reason why soldiers hijack political power is when the soldiers perceive that civilian leaders are incapable of maintaining law and order, and it seems as if the institutions of the state, they are broken down. That is when soldiers hijack political power. So A is a likely answer. B says high attrition rate of military officers. It can't be B. Attrition has to do with reduction, people leaving the military. That cannot be one of the reasons leading to rise of military regimes. It can't be C. C says low esteem and weak confidence in the military. No. D says strong and able leadership. When the political class is strong and able, it does not necessitate coup d'etat. So what looks like the perfect answer here is option A. When there is too much malfeasance, too much maladministration, too much corruption, ethnicism, and nepotism in the system, it gives rise to coup d'etat. Now to the next question. The effectiveness of a country's foreign policy determination can highly be influenced by several key factors. Like we said earlier, foreign policy has to do with the modalities by which a state will relate with other states, and in government, a state is a country. So the strategies, the methods, the approaches, the techniques that Nigeria will use to relate with other countries is called foreign policy. Now, there are many factors that can determine foreign policy. The most important one is national interest. What Nigeria stands to gain, national interest, it determines it. But there are also economic reasons. There are also geographical size. It can determine foreign policy. We have population and so on and so forth. So population can determine foreign policy. The economy can determine foreign policy. But the question says several factors. Population is a factor. Economy is a factor. But the question is asking us for the one that is paramount, the one that comes before others. So economy comes before population, and the correct answer is option A. Now to the next question. One of the key contributions of the Commonwealth of Nations to its member states is that you have to know that Commonwealth refers to association of ex-colonies of Britain, or let me rephrase it, associations of interested ex-colonies of Britain, because US was colonized by Britain. The US chose not to join Commonwealth. So what has been the major benefits of Commonwealth over the years? A, they facilitate trade, investment, and economic development. That's correct. That's one of the achievements of Commonwealth. B, they project the cultural supremacy of the British Crown. That is not a major or a key contribution of Commonwealth. C says providing war assistance to member states. Commonwealth has an objective, a principle, which is peaceful resolution of disputes. So if they are committed to peace, how will they now commit to strengthening people for war? So C is not an answer. D says aligning the aspirations of the British Crown to member states. Member states are already sovereign. They cannot have anything imposed on them. Are you getting that from Britain? So the correct answer here is option A. Now to the next question. The gradual weakening of state power and their traditional strength is primarily due to dash. Now, the power of a state refers to its sovereignty. So what is that thing, or what are those things that have been weakening the power, the authority, and the sovereignty of countries over the years? A says authoritarian political elite system. You know that a state is democratic or authoritarian, it does not weaken its sovereignty or its power. North Korea is communist, China is communist, America is capitalist and democratic. So that one does not determine whether whether their sovereignty will be eroded or not. B says centralized political power. Whether the country practices a centralized political power arrangement, which is unitary, or a decentralized, or which is federal, it does not weaken their sovereignty. C says globalization and transnational flow. That's the correct answer. Because in the light of civilization, modernization, and globalization, no country can isolate itself in world politics. How that a country needs to trade with other countries. And in the aspect of trade, in the aspect of coming together for security coverage, part of the sovereignty of a state is submitted and surrendered when they join international organizations. So option C is the correct answer. Now to the next question. What is a crucial aspect that allows a state to thrive and survive in the international community and world politics? So we are looking at what makes a state strong, what makes a state able and fit to be able to play politics in the international arena. Is it the geographical size? That a country is large geographically, are you getting that? Does not dictate that they'll be powerful politically. Niger has a larger land mass than Nigeria. It doesn't mean that they are stronger politically than Nigeria. Political system. The political system of a state can determine whether they will be effective and powerful, in the community of nations. But we are looking for a more correct answer. So if we can't get a more correct answer, we pick political system. Strong institutions. Strong institutions, it's a crucial aspect that allows a state to thrive in the political arena. I believe that when the institutions of a state are strong, from the governmental and formal institutions to the non-governmental civil liberty organizations, from the executive, legislation, and judiciary, from the tiers, to the organs, when they are virile, when they are viable, when they are strong, they are able to assert an exact influence, in the committee of nations. Sovereignty. No, the correct answer here is option C. Strong institutions is a crucial aspect that allows a state to be powerful and to be seen as powerful in the international global system.